What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cheapskate Garage. And today we're going to be making some corrections on a block that I should have noticed, when I first bought it. And I should have done it very first, but I didn't. And I'll show you what we got going on. So right here, we got the starter mount has cracked off. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld that back together. And for those of you that didn't know, I am a state certified welder. I went to school for welding, and I've looked up a lot of different welding processes for welding cast iron, and a lot of them are different than everybody's got something special to be said about cast iron, it seems like. So I contacted my old welding instructor. He ought to know. He hadn't gotten back to me, so then I contacted Airgas, a really good guy that helped me out a lot with my current employer, and talked to him, and he said, what I want to do is I want to heat up the steel the block to about 450, 500 degrees in the area that I want to weld. Go ahead and weld it with some 55 nickel rod, which is what I bought, and then slowly let it cool down to keep it from cracking. I think we're going to be successful today because it's about 2, maybe 3 years ago, I welded up a T5 or a top loader 5-speed, a manual transmission for a 67 or 66 Mustang, and it's still holding together. So, and that's got a hopped up 289 in it, I think. Josh, don't quote me on that. But no, he's been happy with it. It's still holding together. So we're going to give this a shot, and I got a little setup that I'm going to do. Let me show you. So obviously this is all the important stuff inside the engine. We don't want nothing in there. So I got two options. I could either cover it with a blanket, or what I like to use is a moist towel. And the reason why it's moist is any weld berries that come off and hit that, they first got to evaporate the water before they can burn through it. We can take a weld blanket and actually cover it with it, but weld blankets don't hold water very well. We could temporarily bolt on the oil pan, which I kind of like that idea, even though it's a nasty mess. But then we still got the bottom side exposed, and I'm not too worried about it because it's facing down. But I think I'm going to get started by cleaning that area up. I also want to note that is what I did is I took and cut a piece of wood almost to length, and I'm helping support the engine on this end of it, because once it gets hot up there, I don't want to take a chance on warping the steel up in here. I don't think it's going to get hot enough to do that, but hey, in my day I've had steel do some really weird things. I think is what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to stay away from this bowl hole here, but I'm going to try to bring the metal up and over like that and try to get down in here. Then I got a little jig right here. It's going to bolt into here, and then it's going to tell me exactly where this hole needs to go for when I re-drill it. So I'm just going to get after it. So this is what I'm going to be welding with today. 1/8 inch 55 nickel rod, all grades of cast iron. Good for building up worn areas, good for machinability. AC or DC polarity, 70 to 110 amps. We're going to be doing it with my thermal arc welder. So I got a MAP gas torch here that I'm heating it up with. It gets a little bit hotter than propane. I forget exactly what. But I got this. I'm going to hit it on the front side. Hit it on the back side. I want heat through and through this piece. And you really want to think about like how hot it gets, because the deeper down it gets, the better off you are. You're basically heating up all the metal molecules in there, all the carbon in there, and giving it a chance to move around and stretch rather than shrinking and cracking. And that's the problem with cast iron, is it's so brittle because of the high carbon content that it likes to crack. So see, right now we're already up to 230 degrees. We'll just keep going with it. Right now I got the welder set up for electrode positive. I really don't know if that's going to be the best choice. It says that it's DC or negative or positive. So we'll just see how it turns out with positive, and then if I'm not really happy with it, we'll switch it over to negative and try welding with the same setting, see if I will get the better penetration. But I only have a ½ pound of this rod, so I kind of got to be mindful of how I use it. I think I got enough to fill this up, and I'm just going to take my time with it. We're not in a rush today. We got all day to get this done. So I want to show you something right in here. Right in there is some slag inclusion, and if I don't get that out, it's going to create a void in my weld. And I almost might come back and grind off all this just so that way I can make sure I can get a good weld up in there. This ain't looking that great, and I figured it wouldn't look that great, but by the time I'm done, it'll be just fine. I'm not getting any cracking or anything else that I can see at the moment, so I'm pretty happy so far. So I went ahead and I chunked it off, because now I've started filling this base. Now is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in through that gap right there with the Dremel and clean it all out so it's nice and smooth. Same with down in here, so that way I can plug that full of weld and get some good threads in there for the bolt. Just a little check in here is what I'm starting to do. Is what I did is I went ahead and cut this off, and then I went and started filling it all in like that. And I'm really taking my time picking out the slag, and if I have to get the Dremel out, any inclusions or anything else like that, I am removing and re-welding over it. And I'm always checking my temperature, trying to keep it up there as hot as I can get it, or as close to 500 as I can get it. So it's actually turning out all right. I think it's going to be okay. This is the type of welded men dream about. In here, a little bit of an update. We're getting it built up pretty good. I got to go all the way up to this ridge line, nice and square, and I have a little bit of porosity right down. Will the camera pick it up? No. Maybe it could if I could hold it still. But there's a little bit of porosity right down in there, so I had to grind it out. And I don't know. Maybe you got it kind of like right in the center of your screen, but boy, what a chore this project's been. We'll just add it to the list of everything to do. We're gonna keep on chugging along. I just got my intake manifold, so that means after this is done and cooled, I can actually assemble the whole block. Then I'll have a motor and transmission ready to dive into this thing. I'm gonna do some work on the engine bay. Here, let me show you real quick. It's kind of rusty looking, so I'm gonna paint all that up, get rid of the numbers on the back firewall there, and go through this and get all the wiring ready. Like obviously the ECU is probably coming out because I don't think I even need it. I did label some of the wires that I needed, that I knew I needed, but other than that, it's coming along. I left the power steering pump hooked up. No sense in taking it out. My AC condenser down here is coming out. My vacuum ball is probably coming out. My electronically controlled brakes are probably coming out because I think that's off the computer too. If any of you comment what to do about my AC stuff, let me know. I'm not too familiar with how this box all comes apart and what it looks like, so I might make a piece of sheet metal to cover that. I don't know. Comment down below and let me know. So you might be thinking, he's welding this hole shut, how's he gonna know where to locate the hole? Well, let me show you. We know that it's exactly a ½ inch away from the face of the back of the engine block. And we know that the center on center, the holes are 3 1/4 inches apart. So I made this block. It sets in there. I had to modify it to clear the engine stand. But this bolt holds this block right in there, and essentially that's imitating your starter. So now all I do is take a 5/16 drill and drill that out so I could tap it for a 3/8/16 bolt. I think it's pretty clever. I think it's going to work just fine. But for right now, I just want to see if I got enough material built up, so I'm going to go and put this down through there and ever so gently mark where that hole is. Not only that, but this piece of steel is acting like a drill guide, so that way I drill it nice and straight. I think that's enough. Take it out of it. So now we come back here and get you in there a little closer. And you can see that that's right where my hole is. I could probably use a little bit more to be built up right there, but yeah, I think we're gonna do that. And keep in mind right there is where our hole is gonna be. And as some of you probably already know that these starter bolts have a knurled end on them, which I guess it's supposed to go up in there and help it grip to keep the bolt from spinning or slipping. They only go in there about 1/4 inch, so what I'll do is before I go to tap it, I'll run I think a 3/8 bit down in there like 1/4 inch, because once I drill it out for 5/16, that'll help guide my hole down, and I'm not really worried about that part. And they also jag cell starters that take all 3 holes on the engine block. So, yeah. And then the final solution is, I've also read online that guys take like a little piece of aluminum and wedge it between the block and the starter to keep the starter from moving and cracking like that. But I think this is going to be welded up plenty, and I don't see it ever having an issue again. Well, it's drilled. All I got to do is tap it now, and there's plenty of other videos on YouTube about how to tap a hole. Remember guys, I have hours and hours and hours experience of running bead. Hopefully the footage turns out decent and I can throw it in the YouTube of making the beads and welding. It's either it is or it isn't gonna. I don't know if I have the camera settings right, but if you're a first-time welder, I don't recommend doing this. This is a lot of work. And every time I got a little tiny slag inclusion into it, I was taking my little Dremel tool, the same one that I used in the previous video of cleaning out the cylinder heads. I was taking that and getting down in there, and I was removing the material away from it, because if you have a little bit of slag inclusion and it's right up next to your thread after it's done, that's going to be a complete weak spot, and it's going to give it every opportunity to break again. And after I got going into this, I really realized that, hey, this isn't right. And I looked at it closer, and I realized that what was remaining was somebody else's weld job that they did. And I think is what they tried to do is they had the broken tab and they just tried to patch weld over it. Well, that's not going to work on this. You got to fill it all up. See, I took that, I cut it all out, and I filled it all the way up, and then I re-drilled my hole. So I think it's going to work. If it ever fails, I will definitely report on it and post on it about it, because it's just something interesting to find out. Whoever says you can't weld cast iron, you can. It just might not be the same. So if you like this video, make sure you're subscribed. Tell your friends about it. I appreciate it. And the next video coming out is going to be putting this small block together, the heads on it, the eBay heads. So thanks again to all of you Thanks again to all of you that have subscribed. I appreciate it.